Hey there, my name's Gray Miller, and I write about ADHD, especially about externalizing your executive functions in tactile ways, the whole tactile cognition things. And this particular video is about 5 reasons that you should buy that cool notebook. I'm kind of giving you a hall pass for splurging without guilt when you're at the bookstore. And if that title of the video brought you here, welcome! You are most likely one of us. One of those people who will be stopped in their tracks at the craft market, the bookstore, or Trader Joe's by the sight of a beautiful cover. Sometimes it's something witty on the outside, like decomposition book or this will fix everything. Sometimes it's just beautiful craftsmanship or clever marketing. Archer and Olive or Dapper Notes just feel really good in my hands. And I have been seduced by the beautiful videos, really smart ads, and just usefulness of field notes more than once. And this means that if I make a stack of all of my filled notebooks, it will be significantly shorter than the stack of semi-filled notebooks. And it'll be embarrassingly close to the stack of empty notebooks that I own. Also, I just happen to have a hobby of making little notebooks as well. So, really, you'd think, Gray, you don't need another notebook. And that is true in the empirical sense. But if we base all of our purchases only on need, there'd be no commerce. There'd be no capitalism. Think of the bookbinders. In a perfect world, you wouldn't need an excuse. The poet Toy Dericote has told us already that joy is an act of resistance. And Marie Kondo said that things that spark joy are worth keeping. So if picking up this little Oasis notebook from Profolio makes that dopamine flow, especially with the little tag that I put on the end that's a textured thing, more power to you. You don't need this video, but it's been nice seeing you. Unfortunately, we live in a world where it often feels that we have to justify our pleasures, even more than we have to justify our existence. And so for those who are looking for that justification, I got you. First of all, there's the commonplace book, which makes you smarter. You know, when you read something or hear something and you think, oh, hey, that was pretty interesting, or funny, or smart, or just something that seemed worth remembering, that's what a commonplace book is. Instead of bookmarking it in some electronic archive that you'll never visit, or forwarding it, or even screenshotting it, screenshotting, whatever, write it down in your commonplace book. And this will do two things. One, whatever that quote was, it will lodge more firmly in your memory because it will be tied to the muscle memory of your hand, the feeling of the pen, the scratch of the nib of the paper. And two, it will give you a talisman against doom scrolling. Instead of pulling out your phone, you pull out your commonplace book, open to a random section, and smile, saying, oh yeah, I remember reading that. And the one that I have is actually from Amy McNee's book, We Need Your Art. She said, be wary of betraying the inner child, your inner artist, by trying to be someone else's version of a responsible adult. That's a reminder that I need. You may not need it, but I'm glad that I wrote it down. Second thing you can use it for is a journal. A journal makes you calmer. Now, there are probably as many studies about the benefits of journaling as there are books, articles, videos, and podcasts about the studies that show the benefits of journaling. I have certainly created my share. In fact, I'm about to launch an entire workshop called Papermancy that includes a journaling challenge. Now, I'm not saying that journaling is always fun. It's not. It can be cathartic, it can be creative, it can be any number of things, but there's one thing that tends to come out in your journal, and that's the truth. And that's why it can be uncomfortable, because when you journal, you're having a conversation with yourself. And that makes your bullshit detector even more sensitive than normal. It also helps you notice when your self-talk isn't really yourself. When you write it down and you think, huh, that sounds like mom. or just realizing that you're talking to or about yourself in a way that you never would to a friend. And I think that's the true secret of a journal. You're hanging out with yourself, and that is how you start to become friends with yourself. Now, if that sounds silly to you, if you already like yourself completely the way you are, good on ya. I'm envious. A lot of the rest of us need to remind ourselves through writing that we are, in fact, pretty nifty. And while it's probably the subject of an entire other article, let me just say it here. There's no wrong way to journal. You don't have to write affirmations. You don't have to tell the truth. You don't have to follow prompts or guidelines or anything else. You aren't writing for an audience. Nobody, not even yourself, has to read what you write. You could even just decide, put on the front of your journal, burn after writing. Because the point of journaling isn't what you write. It's that you wrote. Let's talk about how a bujo makes you cooler. What's a bujo, you say? Well, according to Ryder Carroll, author of the bullet journal method, it's part organization, part soul searching, and part dream weaving. Bujo is the cooler sounding name for a bullet journal, as popularized by Ryder Carroll, who wrote that book, and thousands of other people here on YouTube and in the interwebs who talk about it and write about it, and because it's the internet, argue about the right way to do it. Now, whatever way you do it, if you're writing in your notebook and someone says, "What's that?" then when you say a bullet journal, you'll either get a look of curiosity because they've never heard of it, or a look of respect because they have and they know how much it can help. Look, it's been very commercialized. I'll be the first person to admit. You can buy the books, you can buy the pens, you can buy the mini books, you can buy the courses, you can buy the app. But the system itself was basically Ryder Carroll figuring out that making lists helped his recovery from a brain injury. That kind of organic, almost universally useful system doesn't come around all the time. And while you can go to their YouTube channel and buy the special edition look term notebooks and pens and such, I've had one. It was wonderful. What it comes down to is simply that you just use bullet points to make a list. That's really all there is to it. You can put dates on them. You may want to use special markings to show which things are to-dos and which are done and which are meetings and which are happy memories. You may want a list of numbers that's a calendar, or a list of spices at Penzies that you want to eventually buy. Abujo is just making lists to help sort the chaos of existence. And sure, you could just say to that person asking what you're writing in, "Oh, I'm making a list." But I'm convinced that saying, "This is my bujo," makes you sound cooler. And if you're not convinced about the lists, let me just say, checklists seem lowly and simplistic, but they help fill in for the gaps in our brains and between our brains. Okay, I didn't actually say that. I'm quoting Atul Gawande, writer of the Checklist Manifesto, which is a surprisingly good book for a book called the Checklist Manifesto. Let's talk about having an urban sketchbook. It makes you friendlier. See, out of all the notebooks that I've listed here, this is the one that I have the least familiarity with. I have a dream of being one of those people sitting at the farmer's market, drawing the busker, playing the accordion next to the dog across from the organic broccoli stand, or using my watercolors to catch the exact right shade as the fading sunlight slants across the ripples of Venetian canals and hits the terrazzo. But the reality is I don't even know what a terrazzo is. I have done a little bit of urban sketching, which I found out in the first attempt at making this video when I found this sketch inside of my book. That is from the Northside Farmers Market. But I don't carry it around all the time. I don't make it a practice. And I could do it if I would bring a sketchbook with me and just do it. I mean, supposedly it's good for the brain. There's a whole lot of internet opinion about that. And I'm going to quote one person named Sharon from the Quick Sketch Society website. And she says, at its core, urban sketching is an invitation to slow down. In a world of fleeting moments and hurried routines, taking the time to observe and translate what you see on paper allows you to engage more deeply with your surroundings. And that's why I say that an urban sketchbook will make you friendlier, because you will be engaging with the people around you. And most of the time, they'll come over and take a look and they'll be amazed that you were drawing them. Now, I just used that bad word, and I can hear the chorus of, yeah, but I can't draw. To which I say, phooey. Double phooey, even. Now, I can say that because I used to say, I can't draw. And there may be a very small population of people for whom that is literally true. But for the vast majority of us, especially those who are watching this video, the reality is not that we can't draw. The reality is that we do not draw. And there's usually a variety of reasons, including, but not limited to, we believe there are more important things to do and we cannot waste time. Or sketching is something that artists do, not me. Or what I draw, it won't be any good. Or it's easier to just pull out my phone and start doom scrolling. Which is kind of funny because that last excuse is almost the exact opposite of what the first excuse was about not wasting time. But usually we can say them in the same breath. And that's because it's all a bunch of perfectionist, no true Scotsman hustle culture bullshit. Here's a hypothetical question. Let's pretend that you are watching a child. Could be your child, could be a favor for a friend, whatever. And they spend a half hour with their crayons and some scrap paper and rush over to you and say, look what I made. Do you say, why were you wasting time scribbling? Or maybe you say, oh, honey, don't you know? Drawing is for artists, not you. Or maybe, that's really not very good. Maybe you should play with something else. I mean, if they ask, can I color? Do you just say, no, I think you should watch this iPad YouTube channel on how to color instead? Here's the thing. If you wouldn't say this to your friends, kid, why would you say it to yourself? Especially when not saying it can be a justification for buying or making or at least carrying another cool notebook. And kind of related to urban sketching, but not really, is a sketch note book. And that's what makes you wiser. I showed you a little bit of one, actually. In case you didn't cure the I can't draw bug and you're still like, I don't want to draw, that's fine. Sketchnoting is still for you because sketchnoting is about ideas, not art. Mike Rohde wrote the Sketchnote Handbook and later the Workbook and popularized it. And that is one of the core tenets of the entire practice. See, here's the thing. Our brains work better with symbols than with letters for a lot of things, because, I mean, that's why we have icons on our desktop and icons on our phones, and brands have logos rather than just the name in a lot of cases. And for most things, the nuances and connections are more complex than can be expressed simply in linear notes. But we can't only use images most of the time. There are aspects of language and typography that make ideas more clear. For example, you use headings, you have italics for emphasis or bold. So the first thing about sketch notes is, unless you're a professional sketch noter, and yes, they do exist, I have done that work, your sketch notes are just for you. They don't have to be understandable to anyone. They don't even have to be part of a PowerPoint. They don't have to be anything other than a way to remind yourself of what happened. For example, I have here a page from the Spiral Time workshop that I attended as part of the Neuro Queer Creative Practice workshop. And, you can see I have little symbols to illustrate the ideas, but, they're different. I do have just lists too, but mainly there's that. And that will just be kind of a reminder I didn't even know that sketch note was in there. I just literally opened it up to a random page. But now that I look at it, it's all coming back to me and that kind of thing. It's kind of an anti-AI thing. Rather than having an AI summary that I read of a meeting that may or may not include made up things, instead of being just spaced out at this meeting, I am engaged in it. I am present in the meeting because I was synthesizing the information into quick symbolic language. Now, as a person with ADHD, I find that it's a fantastic way to keep my brain focused on what is happening. And at the same time, it gives me a lot of dopamine hits as I draw little shapes and labels and arrows and stuff like that. If it looks confusing to you and if you can't understand what I had there, that's good. It wasn't made for you. It was made for me. And I was there at that class, so it helps me remember. But even without understanding it, I mean, doesn't it look more fun than just some straight line notes? Let's face it. It also was just more fun. It's an excuse to have lots, not only nice notebooks, but also really nice pens. And which am I more likely to look at and find and engage with? This or some random file on my computer? And also, I should add, this was done in the official Sketchnote idea book that Mike Rohde partnered with. I think it's called Airship, was the company name. Could be wrong. But anyway, it's a really nice notebook. It was also really expensive. I can't afford to have all my notebooks like this, but it has done a lot of good. Here's the thing, you have permission. The entire premise of this video, it's kind of just tongue-in-cheek, because I mean, you don't need an excuse to get a new notebook, but that's not really the problem, is it? What you might need is permission to use the notebook in the ways that it can best benefit you. What you need is the justification of time spent creating and working in the notebook. Whether it's journaling or your inner monologue, sketching a coffee cup, being the weird one at the staff meeting who's not typing on their laptop. Or maybe, and this is the real truth, I'm the one who needs the justification and the permission, and I'm just letting you come along with my inner monologue. And if so, thanks. Good to have you here. Hopefully this results in some quality time between you and whatever notebook is handy. If so, let me know in the comments. I noticed to say like and subscribe at some point, so I say that too. But you can also find more of my writing and even a few of my podcasts at adhdopen.space. And here's the bonus material, because I wrote this on Medium at first, and in Medium, there was a very nice person who left me a comment, and I'm going to read that comment and quote her because it was really cool. I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, I have to find it, so talk amongst yourselves. I'm sure I will just, edit this out afterwards with my long-term editing skills. All right, there it is. It goes. If you want to find me on Medium, if you haven't been a member, you can feel free to. It's graymiller.medium.com. But I do operate behind a paywall, so if you don't want to go to the paywall, you can go to adhdopen.space, or hey, come here on this thing. So I want to read something I got from Nina Cherie Flory Stevenson, who said, "Great article. Thanks for the permission. I grant you permission too." Thank you, Nina. Follow your journal-loving heart. She says, "I spent so many years collecting, partially using, getting bored, deciding that the format wasn't quite right, before I finally figured out what works for my particular ADHD brain. And while I do have a particularly special leather sketchbook I use only for art, and a yearly composition book for conference notes, I've combined everything else into one notebook. It's a thick spiral multimedia, i.e. heavyweight, paper sketchbook." Look at that, I have one right here. Because I did actually go out and get one after she wrote this, because it sounded awesome. And she says, I use this for everything: lists, brainstorming, sketches, doodles, journaling, weekly planner pages, whatever I need out of my head where I can see it. I use a magnetic bookmark to keep my current planner page handy, a bullet journal style first page where I record the page numbers of anything I might want to reference later on, book lists, writing prompts, holiday plans, etc., and an occasional stick-on index tab for frequently referenced pages like an active project or to-do list. It's perfect because it can be used for everything and adapted anytime my needs change. If only I could change the cover with my mood, lol. Well, guess what? I happen to really like that idea. That's why I went out and bought one. And I also think this is great. And I get also thinking that it wouldn't be too hard to make a kind of a slipcover that would be able to change with your mood. Also, I am in the process of making this into a magnetic one, but I have a little special bookmark that I call a tasket. And the idea is I make my top 3 things, and when I do them, I take them off, put them on the back, and I have a check mark. And I make that into a magnet as my bookmark. And the nice thing about using sticky notes is that the inside of the book works as a place to hold sticky notes. So, love the collaboration, love talking to people about notebooks. So if you have something to talk about notebooks, please do put it in the comments. I will be putting another notebook thing up soon. To be fair, I do talk about ADHD, not just notebooks. It just so happens that the other video that I have yet to put up online is also about notebooks. So I will see you then.